I'm just desperate to get out of my own way at this point, and I'm hoping that maybe if I embarrass myself on the internet enough, I'll just get used to it. My new audio equipment did me real dirty, and it gave me an opportunity to back out of this. It really did. I could have pretended like this whole thing never happened, and, you know, just been like, hey guys, remember Ninja Turtles? Could have gone to my grave with my dignity intact, but no. This is youtube.com. I've written a lot of things, you know, scripts for 200 videos at this point, but I've also written short stories. I've written half a novel, and I've even written, dare I say, poetry. None of these have ever seen the light of day. Why is that? Well, it's just the most pathetic reason in the world, but we'll get to that. Okay, so when you write fiction, it is impossible to do so without exposing a lot about yourself. Not just your values, but also the things that you love, or lust, or the things you think are cool. And I grew up in a time when the worst thing you could do, the greatest sin of all, was to love something with full sincerity. I hate this, and it's something I'm so happy to see Gen Z destroying. Just this culture of cool that millennials built brick by brick, ripped to shreds by hordes of savage children with their TikToks and their middle parts. And thank God for it, honestly, because I'm sick to death of this culture of frosty, disengaged coolness of the early aughts. Into the dumpster. Where am I going with this? I'm just stalling. I'm sorry, I can't help it. It's all so tragic. So recently, my local library reopened, which was very convenient timing because I was reaching the peak of my, oh my God, I fucking hate social media, and if I read one more article about how Republicans are murdering the planet, I'm going to vomit phase. So let's go to the library, this most beautiful and sacred of institutions that for most of my life I've used exclusively to print out my homework. I'm sorry, let's back up a little bit, just back, way back, further than you'd think. If you were to have asked my middle school teacher in 1995, can this child read? She would have said, yes, obviously she can read. For one, I spoke almost exactly as I do now. I was born an old woman and remain thus. Also, if you handed me a sentence, I could read it, like the quick red fox jumped over the lazy brown dog. I was, by the very technical definition, literate. I somehow managed, through context clues and sheer gumption, to get very high grades in English and reading, despite having the reading comprehension skills of a Fabergé egg. It's because it's very elaborate on the outside and nothing on the inside. It's a metaphor. I was very interested in art, however, and I showed quite an aptitude for drawing very early. Do you like this? I painted it with paint. So this love for art and this distinct weakness in reading made comics an obvious choice for me. The problem was that in the 90s, comics were not for girls, at least the ones that I could find. So comics in the 90s were essentially for heterosexual boys and their 40-year-old counterparts, and that is it. I was still really impressed with the artwork, but it was so horny. It was so horny, like horny to the point where it would be uncomfortable to read them in public. If I had asked my mom to buy me one, there would be questions. Is this allowed? This left me mostly reading Archie comics, which I tolerated, but they were for boomers, right? Like they're old, so most of the jokes were outdated by about 30 years and I didn't get a lot of them. Until one day, I discovered that one of my favorite shows at the time, Sailor Moon, had a comic. Specifically, it had a manga. And I just have to say this, you whippersnappers have no idea how good that you've got it. Like if you wanted manga in the 90s, you had to go to a specialty import store and you had to walk all the way to the back past some weird guy clutching a VHS bootleg copy of Sailor Moon and the Seven Balls, and you had to ask for it by name. And if they had it, you wouldn't be getting a book like this. No, because Viz Media, that's upside down. Because Viz Media would be publishing 2 to 3 chapters at a time in a standard floppy American format. I mean, we wouldn't want to confuse Americans by giving them something good. Yeah, I said it. Choke on it, Witchblade. I had very little access back then to manga, but the ones that I was able to get, I loved so much. I specifically loved when the artist would break the fourth wall and write little comments and asides to the readers. It was so fun and intimate, and I still do that in my art to this day. Now, to suggest that manga from Japan was in any way less horny than American comics does sound silly. A bit difficult to believe. And there certainly was that genre. There was also a lot of tame stuff for, you know, girls who wouldn't hit their sexual awakening until Disney's Mulan came out. I'm gonna leave it in. I'm gonna leave it. Anyway, I digress. Let's get down to business. So imports from Japan really boomed in the 90s and 2000s. And so a lot of the cool, new, interesting stuff was coming from Japan. So for years we had cool fashion trends and pop music and video games and comics, of course. And I was enjoying myself. I was enjoying myself so much. I honestly think it was the last time that I really loved something obliviously. But then the terrible awful occurred. Around 2005, a word slithered into popular usage, and that word was weeaboo. The first place I remember seeing this was 4chan as a replacement term. So whenever somebody would write Wapanese, it would get replaced and corrected in the post to weeaboo. Here's the thing, I thought I already knew what this was, right? Like, if you knew someone who went totally off the deep end and was convinced that they were in love with Ryoko from Tenchi Muyo, you were an otaku. Somebody who loved anime and manga so much that they made it their entire personality and everyone else's problem. Like, a lot of us liked anime, but we also liked other things too. I'll have you know that I had a very diverse range of cringy interests. I had an extensive knowledge of English tea party etiquette and a very sincere crush on Brandon Boyd from Incubus. I could recite Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven from memory. Indeed, my reading comprehension problem was extremely selective. Weeaboo was different though, because the accusation wasn't, haha, you like anime. It was, you want to be Japanese, which is a lot harder to defend against because it's so weird. Because when someone accuses you of liking anime, the response is just, yeah? So what? You don't like giant robots? You schmuck? But the accusation, you want to be Japanese, the response is just, no? And haha, that's exactly what a weeb would say. Also, I think it's important to acknowledge, like, how much of this happened entirely in my own head. Like, despite my adolescent awkwardness, no one Jeff the Killered me. I was not bullied into some painful and turbulent emo phase. In fact, I was not bullied at all. Oh, and so I know you're thinking, well, then you must have been a bully. But no, I just kept to myself. In the hierarchy of alpha to omega, I was option C. Not applicable. None of the above. I was barely aware there was a hierarchy at all. I only knew it didn't involve anime, and so I didn't care. Brent, who cares what he thinks? I bet he couldn't name a single Gundam. Still, the term stuck with me. Like, I have always been my harshest critic, or maybe the only one I was ever aware of. The possibility that anyone could possibly anywhere think that I was a weeaboo, it was too much. This was also around the same time that we began to start having conversations of how sexist a lot of anime was, and finally being given the language to talk about that and the way we kind of felt about it. And male fans' response to that was very illuminating. I remember that the following years, the community became much more hostile towards women, and there was a lot more like nerd cred checking and like men wanting you to prove that you were a real anime fan and stuff like that. And honestly, I don't remember that ever happening before those years. And again, I was not being teased for liking anime. That was purely self-cringe that happened internally. The Weeaboo Police were living rent-free in my head. I want to fully just blame the jerks who drove me away from the fandom, but it really was me, like self-cringing at my own behavior and the fear of being possibly confused with whatever this girl is doing here.
I'm an otaku? which is another word for anime freak. Because of my enthusiasm into the Japanese animation, I started working on designing kimonos, hand making them.
God, I'm a coward. I gave up an entire genre of media that I loved so much, and no one was even bullying me. I can't imagine the brazenness of those nerds who just continued to be cringy and just dealt with it. Like, can you imagine? It was honestly years before it finally dawned on me that weeaboo, it's just a totally stupid criticism. Like, anime and manga encompass an enormous amount of trends that just have nothing to do with Japan. So on one hand, you have movies like Princess Mononoke, My Neighbor Totoro, the Studio Ghibli, genre. Those are very much based in Japanese history and tradition and family life, and they're great. They're really beautiful. But on the other side, you have Porco Rosso, which is set in Italy. It's about sky pirates, flying planes. It doesn't star a samurai, it stars a piggy. Steam Boy, a critically acclaimed masterpiece, set in Victorian England. And fight me on this, nerds, but the dub is really good. It's got Captain Picard in it, and I think Claire Danes. Yeah? Yes. I really hope I'm right. Like, if Cowboy Bebop had been released out of Brazil or Australia, I'm confident that people would have still liked it. So many of these shows and stories are like set in a parallel universe or the distant future or space. Space is not actually Japanese. It's just a fun fact if you didn't know already. Akira, isn't that Belgian? Can't say I've seen it. I'm just gonna get up. I'm sorry, I'm very short. One of the biggest draws for Western women to anime was like the Kawaii Style and Lolita aesthetics, right? Which is just like hyper feminine, ultra cutesy, lots of like ribbons and bows and stuff. And it is technically from Japan, sort of. The styles are Japan's interpretation of European fashions. The ruffles, the lace, the bows. It's a blend of English, French, and sometimes German aesthetics, all exported through a Japanese lens. Do you see what I mean? Like, the concubines of the Edo period were not running around in like maid outfits and pinafore dresses like, Takagawa-san, notice me. Like, one of the key must-haves of any kawaii wardrobe is a plaid skirt. Plaid? Madam, good people of the jury, I ask you, is this an obsession with Japan or anyone who will let me LARP as a princess? You think Forever 21 was gonna sell me this outfit? You're wrong. Who am I even arguing with? Like, where are the emails demanding I explain any of this? There aren't any, they don't exist. I'm fighting myself here. Why am I even doing this? Well, it's because the self-cringe that began with the word weeaboo did not stay secluded to anime. It actually spread like an infection to the rest of my life. I'm honestly shocked I even made the K-pop video at all, the way my brain constantly screams at me. What if by defending Koreaboos, people think you're a Koreaboo? What if, Maggie? What if it gets picked up by some sad hate site and the worst people on earth make fun of you? What if all your teeth fall out and you die? What if you write something embarrassing and then the internet breaks up with you? It's insanity. I guess what I'm saying is that this fear of mockery has really stifled my ability not just to enjoy anime and manga, but to create art. When I was at the library, I discovered they had a whole manga section now, and I saw a ton of people in it, and they were all having fun and enjoying themselves, and it was just so normal and fun. And I realized that this fantasy that I had about people making fun of me and thinking I was lame and thinking I was uncool or ugly or stupid was just like complete fiction, like self-hate fiction. It was weird. Have you guys read My Giant Spider and Me? A post-apocalyptic tale? It's so cute. I love it so much. I actually really enjoy writing. And I've written so many things that I never showed anyone or I never finished. Why? Well, it's just the most pathetic reason in the world. I'm too ashamed. Which is so stupid. Like, how can I have any shame? I'm a YouTuber. You want shame? I'll give you shame. I used to write Mary's monologue from Silent Hill 2 on my school desk and leave it for other kids to, see how cool I was. I cried at the end of Final Fantasy VIII, and I had a crush on Zell. I had a self-insert Silent Hill OC named Ophelia. I hand-wrote Mortal Kombat fan fiction wherein my best friend and I went to Outworld to save our boyfriends. Sub-Zero and Scorpion, of course. Mine was Sub-Zero, I'm not gross. I used to draw on the same Oikaki boards as Eren Hansen. I discovered this because of a retrospective he did on his own art a few years ago. And on the off chance that he recognizes my screen name, no one tell him. In middle school, I was at a holiday concert and we were all applauding, and then there was a main kid hit a high note and everybody was yelling, and I accidentally yelled really loudly in the person's ear who was right in front of me, and they turned around, they looked really annoyed. It haunts me. I would really like to stop being embarrassed now. I think that it's inefficient and a waste of my time. I go to the grocery store and I see books written by people that are like, Kansas Thunder. She was just an inner city kindergarten teacher and he was like a farmhand on a farm, and they do it. I wrote something, and if I'm being completely honest, I think it's better than Kansas Thunder. But it doesn't matter because only one of them saw the light of day. Only one of us was shameless enough to finish it and show it to people. Only one of us had the audacity. I want to have the audacity. My audacity. God, the word weeb really sucks. It sucked the fun out of everything. I don't know, is that really the moral of this video? Like, hey kids, words hurt. My career. I guess it's as good as any other. I'm just desperate to get out of my own way at this point, and I'm hoping that maybe if I embarrass myself on the internet enough, I'll just get used to it. There's people on this very platform who make an entire career out of being cringe bait. Am I honestly so worried that people will make fun of me on Trisha Paytas's internet? Just write the goddamn book, Magdalen. Hashtag just write the book. If you ever see me being self-deprecating again on Twitter, just hashtag just write the book at me. That's it. That's the video. Thank you for watching. My name is Magdalen Rose, and I explore the depths of my childhood trauma for your entertainment, apparently, this time. Please subscribe to my Patreon like the cool people you see on your screen now. Until next time, team. Bye!